Onimusha 2 is a classic from the PS2 days. It was first released in 2002 to favorable reviews from fans and critics alike. Fast forward to today, its remaster has now been released almost 20 years after. Does it still hold up, or is this just an appetizer for the main course, Onimusha Way of the Sword, which is set to release next year? Well, let's find out. You play as Yagyu Jubei, who comes back to his hometown to find it razed to the ground by the demonic forces of Oda Nobunaga, who was reborn through the power of a race of demons called the Genma. Seeing the destruction wrought by the evil warlord, Jubei vows to take revenge and Nobunaga's head. He isn't alone on this journey though, as along the way, he meets with a colorful cast of people: sharpshooter Magoichi, brash monk Eke, the agile ninja Kotaro, and the mysterious warrior in western armor Oyu. Jubei goes on a journey of vengeance as well as discovery as he pursues Nobunaga and learns more about his family's mysterious lineage. Onimusha 2's story is fairly straightforward. Your clan's village was destroyed and you want to take revenge. Simple. But the fun of the story is in learning the lore of the world of Onimusha 2, as well as the colorful characters that Jubei meets on his journey. It's not just Jubei's allies who are interesting. Even the villains are quite the characters. We have a unique and vibrant cast that adds spice to Jubei's story, as well as serve as a little bit of a foil to Jubei's straight-faced, serious character. The folklore of Onimusha is also really interesting. As you journey through the various stages, you get to read various notes and texts concerning the Yagyu family's lineage and history, as well as the history of demons and Oni in general. Reading through them was entertaining and left me wanting to know more about the world of Onimusha. The gameplay of Onimusha 2 stays true to the original, maybe even to a fault. Back when it released, Onimusha 2 was praised for the improvements it made over its predecessor. At first, the combat seems straightforward enough. You swing your sword to kill enemies and guard when enemies try to kill you. But the more you play, the more tools you get your hands on, and the gameplay starts to open up. Swords, spears, warhammer, bow and arrow, every weapon feels distinct. Each weapon also gives you access to elemental attacks with flashy effects and animations. There's also a progression system that allows you to strengthen not just your weapons but your armor as well. Again, at first it feels simple, but if you come in here thinking just swinging your sword would be enough to get you by, you'll find yourself very wrong. Even regular enemies can overwhelm you, especially in bigger groups. You should also be aware of boss attack patterns because they can definitely hit hard and melt your HP. Blocking, dodging, maneuvering, attack timing, you need to use all that's available to you to keep yourself alive. You'd especially find the critical attack system useful. You perform a critical attack when you time an attack right as an enemy attacks you. You can think of it like a parry-counter kind of thing, and it can save you in critical situations. But even if you do get beaten down, the Onimusha form is a trump card you can pull out when things get hairy. The Onimusha form grants you access to special techniques and invincibility, and can only be done when this gauge is full, so use it wisely. The gift system is also fairly underrated in my opinion. The game doesn't really explain this one very well, but the gift system adds a lot of story, gameplay, and even replayability. In between all the action, in the town segments, there are times when you can give gifts to the other characters. Depending on what you give and to whom, your bonds will strengthen, which unlocks new story paths, cutscenes, and even branching gameplay segments. There are over 100 unique character-driven events for you to find, so start experimenting with those gifts. Or use a guide because the game does not hold your hand with this one. But as we mentioned a while ago, the remaster keeps the game as close to the original as possible, almost to a fault. For example, the camera is probably the biggest pain in the ass in this whole game. There were times when I would exit an area unintentionally just because the fixed camera and the controls would mess me up. There are boss battles that would also be fairly annoying due to the fixed camera angle. As someone who's replayed the RE1 remake fairly recently, I know that the fixed camera angle has its good points, as archaic as some people might think it is. With RE1, the gameplay is a lot more slow-paced, so you have more time to adjust your brain to the camera angles. Also, since you use guns in RE, all we need to do is point in the direction of the zombie and shoot. It also helps with the horror direction as the game has full control of what to show and what not to show, and it also kinda takes away your freedom, which adds to the horror factor. That's different from an action game where it's more fast-paced and you have to constantly be maneuvering around and need to have a lot of control over your actions. There's also the problem of not having a quick button combo to change your weapons. You'd be in the middle of an intense battle, needing to change your strategy a little bit by choosing a different weapon. But then you have to break the flow by going into a menu and choosing the weapon you need. Having button shortcuts for healing and weapon changes would have really gone a long way to improving the battle experience. The game retains its PS2 look, but with a little more polish as it's now built upon the RE engine. It's a noticeable upgrade that modernizes it a little and makes it pop. But unfortunately, certain old aspects of it still stand out. Blurry faces, pixelated backgrounds, and the occasional awkward character model can break the immersion and look a little bit jarring. Still, the visuals don't really get in the way too much. For a game being revived from 20 plus years of sleep, it holds up surprisingly well. The audio also does a pretty good job of augmenting the game by putting weight on Jubei's movements. The soundtrack also does a good job of injecting adrenaline into your system through its cinematic yet traditional Japanese sounding tracks. However, what really brings the game down is its voice acting. It feels stuck in the olden days of voice acting not really being a priority in game development. Even from an audio quality standpoint, it's not very good. Lines sound muffled and flat, dragging down the story scenes. Onimusha 2 is a remaster that brings back a classic, and while it does show its age, it still proves to be a fairly enjoyable game. It's a must-play for fans of the series, a nostalgic trip back to the good old days. For newcomers, it provides a better way to enjoy a 20-plus-year-old classic. Although I do understand it might be a little hard to get into considering there are times where it really does feel like a 20-year-old game, especially with the menus and the fixed camera angles. But for 30 USD, it gives us good value, as Onimusha 2 is a game with a lot of replayability and extra post-game content. All that being said, we're giving Onimusha 2 Remaster a 74. So enough about our thoughts. What about you? Did you play the original Onimusha back on the PS2? What do you think of the remaster? What do you think should have been changed along with the remaster? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Like if you liked, subscribe for more reviews and other video game related content. This has been Game 8, and we'll see you next time.